in how to present. So he's going to have some words and constructive criticism for me after this. But for now, I want him to educate all of us on how to sell in this virtual space. So, Troy, welcome. Thank you so much. I'll have you take it away here. Everyone in the cards, welcome, Troy.
In a world where we have to wipe everything down, right? Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for the introduction. I'll hold my breath as you walk by. No, welcome everyone and thank you for this opportunity to come forward and speak with you today. So, as my introduction is, I work with a company called Sage Presence. So, Dean and Pete are the founders of the company. Dean hires and Pete McElwack. They are filmmakers by trade, and they have spent the last 20 years working with individuals to help them present more effectively. They started off in the film and television industry, and so as a result, as did I. So my background is film and television. I produced a series for the Discovery Health Channel. I produced for the History Channel. I also spent 4.5 years with Minnesota Film and TV, which is the state film commission, in which I had an opportunity and privilege to actually travel around the great state of Minnesota, seeking out wonderful venues, as many of you have, and helping promote those as a destination for film and television production in the great state of Minnesota. I like to tell people that I shook hands and kissed babies for Minnesota film production. So that opportunity provided me a great chance to get a sense of the venues in Minnesota and the challenges that you faced pre-COVID, and now the unbelievable challenges that you face in the middle of this pandemic. Sage Presence' real focus is helping architects, engineering, and construction, really any professional service firm, present themselves effectively and with a level of confidence. So today's presentation is about winning new business in a virtual world, and I wanted to share a little backstory on our experience in Sage Presence. Like many of you, we had prepared and planned for an amazing spring and an amazing summer and an amazing fall. And we were prepared to do our training. We do a lot of high-stakes interview prep. So what that means is we'll go in and work with teams who are preparing for a sales presentation, who are going to be pitching a project that could be multi-million-dollar or billion-dollar. So Sage Presence helped Parkinson Construction win the U.S. Bank Stadium, to give you a sense of an example in the Twin Cities of where we've coached teams. Our expertise is not in architecture, engineering, and construction. Our expertise is helping you prepare for your sales presentation and to present yourself effectively and to present it with confident presence. It's not everyone in this industry or in this world is confident stepping up in front of people. And so what we've discovered is not everyone is comfortable stepping up in front of a screen now. Like the added pressure of, oh, I have to be in a group of people, I have to network. Oh wait, now I can't do that. Now I have to do it in front of a screen. And I hate seeing myself on the camera, I hate seeing myself on the screen. So today, just in sort of a high-level overview, we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between screen presence and stage presence. We're going to talk some general camera tips for Zoom environment. Now, many of us are probably used to the Zoom space now, but we coach teams weekly, if not more. And what we've discovered is that although there are incredibly intelligent folks, architects, engineering, construction, they're used to interacting with people. It's remarkable, and you might see this in your own Zoom environments as well. How many people just either don't think about how they're presenting themselves on screen, or it's just, and it's not that they're being intentional about it, it's just they might not be aware that there are some simple techniques that really change the way your experience is for the people that you connect with. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about message design and the art of soundbite. You know, the difference between the stage presence or presenting in front of people and screen presence is that in the screen presence world, it's sort of like being in the news. You really have to change the way that you communicate because we live in a world where we're used to watching televisions, right? We're used to seeing things on the screen. But just by a show of hands, how many seconds do you think it is between cuts when you're watching something on television? Netflix. I got a 3 seconds over there. That's our video guy. And that's correct. We are used to seeing the cut every now and then. So when we're on presenting on virtual space, and we're going on and on and on, we're trained as human beings now to be seeing cutting. That's the difference between being in a live environment, right? I can look at you, I can look at you, I can look at you, look at you, and I'm breaking up my view every few seconds. In the Zoom space, it's another thing. So we're going to talk briefly about that. We're going to talk about the synergy of presenting with a team. I don't know how often and I'm going to open this up to some questions right before we get started, but I don't know how many of you in the environments that you are presenting with other people, or have to do a sales pitch with other people. And how do you do that in the Zoom space, or in the live space for that matter? And then ultimately, the last thing I want to touch upon are the 2 steps to making a connection with people virtually. We have spent years connecting and working with people. We first did it in front of this camera, in front of the screen, and now we're doing it again. The company has gone full circle. Sage Presence has been around for 20 years. And now we're coming back full circle. And we're helping people who aren't used to being in front of the screen be comfortable in front of the screen, because whether we like it or not, the Zoom environment is here. So Sage Presence in the COVID experience, my brief story, and then I want to open it up to you, and I want to hear about some of the challenges that you're all facing before we jump in, is Sage Presence was prepared for a great spring, a great summer, and a great fall. We were teed up to do trainings. We do large trainings where we help people tell their story, tell their value proposition. We help them with their confident presence, and we help them with networking skills. So we do a lot of business development work for teams. We also do the interview support. So we were going to be traveling. We've got clients throughout the United States. We do a lot of work in California, on the East Coast, and a variety of states, Denver as well, Portland, etc., in Oregon. So we were all prepped for that. COVID hit. We're a team that's used to training people live. And then suddenly we had to adapt to the virtual space. Our founders never really liked the idea of doing their training virtually. So what we had to do was adapt, as I'm sure all of you have in your space. But we adapted, and we started to offer webinars to our clients to help educate them on how to present themselves effectively in the virtual space. Then what we discovered was people still have to interview for work. Work still continues, particularly when it comes to construction projects and projects that need to be interviewed. Teams who need to do that. So one of the largest projects that we worked on this past summer was a team of 12 people from 3 different companies who all had to present together in the Zoom environment while there were 10 other people on the owner's side who were watching. So you can imagine the dynamics of having the screen with all of these people. And how do you have your team, who's never worked together before, come across like they've worked together for years? And that's what we helped that team do. That team went on to win that project, which was a $2.5 million hospital in San Francisco. It's a 10-year project. We spent at least 3.5 to 4 days over the course of time working with their team on Zoom so that they could present themselves effectively. And the takeaway was the company that hired them said, we really loved it. We felt like we were a cohesive team. We worked with another team where all of the technology failed on them. The technology just crashed, but their grace and the way that they presented themselves, they win that as well. So that's a little snapshot about Sage Presence and my background and experience. I would love to open it up quickly just by shouting it out. What are the challenges? What are maybe the top 3 challenges that your industry, whether it's your events or whether it's your planning or you're in the support side of weddings and events, what are the biggest challenges you're facing right now? Yes?
Events, meetings that we're going to be coming up in a very near future now.
So the cancellation of events, okay? Who else? Yes?
I think the events that are still taking place, the kind of broad, array of people, broad spectrum of everybody's comfort level, even if this is happening in person. So
So the comfort level of events still happening, and what the comfort level is of people coming to that space, regardless of if that size has to shrink.
People being super skittish about putting money down on anything.
Yes, yeah. The people being skittish about putting money down on anything. Anything else that's burning or anything else that's challenging. One question I have for all of you is how many of you are actually doing sales conversations now over Zoom, just by a show of hands? Okay? Most of you. Some of you aren't, but most of you are. And what are you finding to be the biggest challenge about that? Yes?
Them showing up.
Oh.
They put it on the calendar and then they forget, and I send them an email. Oh yeah, you're right, life was busy, I'm sorry, I'll reschedule.
Yeah, so people forgetting. That is a challenge to say the least. Anything else for the live? Yes, back there.
Making a personal connection.
Making the personal connection. Okay, great. We're going to definitely cover that. Yes, ma'am. Okay. The indecisive folks who get on Zoom. Yes, Chris. Distractions. Yeah. How many have been on a Zoom call where either A, the picture's off, so you're having a conversation with a name, if you're lucky, maybe a picture, or two, they're on, but you can tell they're not looking at the camera or they're doing this thing. And they're not invested. They're not locked into the experience. Any other challenges in the Zoom environment?
Having the perfect Zoom background.
Having a perfect Zoom
I mean,
environment.
do you follow Room Rater on Twitter? Because you can get some really good tips on there.
Yeah.
Follow Room Rater on Twitter.
Room rating.
Rate my Skype room.
Oh, rate my Skype room?
Yeah, rate my, their handle, rate my Skype room.
Oh, rate my Skype room.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's like a big deal if you get 10 out of 10. Yeah.
Excellent. Anything else? Okay, well let me jump in. And again, my PowerPoint here today is pretty simple. Nothing fancy because, oh my God, I'm in front of a live group of people. This is thrilling for me in a world where I'm usually boxed in. And if you want to watch next week, I can show you what the experience is of being boxed in the Zoom presentation. This is pretty simple, but the main dynamic that for all of you that we may not consciously be thinking about is that how we present ourselves when we're live with people versus how we present ourselves when we're on stage. So the screen presence versus stage presence. Because they don't translate. You know, when you're used to talking to a group of people and you can make eye contact and you can read body language, it's a very different experience than when you're locked into a certain look in the screen. You also have to be mindful. You can see I'm a little bit animated. So when I'm in the screen presence experience, I often have to be mindful. I still use my I still gesture, but I am mindful of those things. You know, my screen tips and the screen tips for the stage presence are pretty simple. And the important thing to remember here is none of this is rocket science, right? But there are subtle things that can make a difference in how you're presenting yourself. So it might be a little hard to read, so I'll read them. So first of all, to set your stage to look pleasant, not crowded, and not up against the wall, and close your closet doors. When possible, you want to create an environment that helps introduce you as a person as well. Because at the end of the day, in any professional service that we do, yes, in events, they might be choosing the event, but the way they get into the event is because of you. They're making a connection to you. Now, some of you might have stories of where it didn't matter what you said, you might have had a bridezilla, and I don't know if that's appropriate terminology in this world or not. But,
Yes, it is.
okay, thank you. I'm not here to talk about bridezillas, but it was a heck of a TV show. But setting your stage allows you to present yourself as well, or your brand. One of the biggest challenges that we face during this COVID time is our brand is impacted. So often we're used to coming to great venue spaces like this. This sells itself. You walk in and you see the space, or you see the pictures online, and you realize that this is where I want to be. But how do you do that when you're, in the Zoom space? So be aware of you're setting your stage to look present, not crowded. You don't have to have a full studio. You don't have to create a studio environment. But it is important to feel like it gives you a flavor of who you are and what your background is. Light your set indirectly from above, but not behind you, and fill with other lights. Here's the biggest one that I notice on Zoom. I wish I had my laptop open and I don't want to get it. But how many have you seen Zooms where people are right in front of a window and they're completely blown out because the camera isn't powerful enough to adapt to that? It's subtle. It's subtleties that, as with all advertising, as with all screen work that we do, it's a subtle experience. Stand to show respect or sit to create a casual working session. This was a big one that we've shared with a lot of folks that they had never thought of. Incredibly intelligent people with high-level jobs in their industries never thought for a moment, oh, I can actually stand up when I'm presenting. And what that does is it changes your body dynamics. It would be a whole different experience if I did my complete presentation from a chair, right? There's a different level of energy that comes to it. I have to hold myself up, but then I can get comfortable, I can lean back, cross my arms. But when I'm standing, if you would do that in your environment, and I don't know in the events world, just out of curiosity, for any of the event spaces, when you've done Zoom, are you at your desk? Are you in the environment? Can anybody share what experiences it?
I think it depends on what kind of meeting you're in. If
Sure.
you're trying to like sell the event
Yeah.
space, you're probably out in the ballroom.
Okay.
But if it's just like an informal call, you're probably at your desk.
Sure. So that was a comment about if you're out in the ballroom, that's one experience. If you're just an informal phone conversation, you're at your desk. I think the other thing as well is, I don't know how many of you are now converting that everything has to be Zoom or versus telephone. How many are you still making phone conversations? And that's really the start, right? It's a phone conversation, they're getting the facts, they're getting the information. But it is challenging when they flip to a Zoom experience and they want to kind of get that connection. But you're also getting their connection as well. Camera, this is an important distinction that I think is helpful, and it's a very subtle one. If you have to use books at home, go ahead and use books, use your dynamic, but get your camera up. There's a subtlety, and it's been utilized in the motion picture industry for years, that if you shoot down at someone, you're giving them a small, dwindled look. They have less power when you're shooting down at yourself. If you're shooting up at someone, they look commanding, they look like they're overbearing, and lighting as well. It's subtleties like that that our subconscious is now used to, and we make judgment calls on people and on experiences because of how they look on camera. So when it comes to the camera, make sure that if it's a laptop or if it's a web camera or whatever the experience that you're choosing, or whatever technology you're choosing, make sure that it's mouth height. Because when that camera comes about mouth height, your eyes are slightly over, but it's not overbearing. How many Zoom experiences have you been on, maybe, where the camera's up and you get half of somebody's face? Or you get the top half of their head? Or they're, my favorite is when they're not even conscious where the camera is, and they think, I'm looking at the screen, so I'm gonna see you. Except they are looking at a screen, and the whole time there's this disconnect. And we all know, even with eye contact, that without it, there's an uncomfortable level if someone isn't constantly looking at it. Now, I don't know how not to make eye contact with people, so I have to consciously go, okay, don't look at them. And then it just is weird because there's sort of this glazed over look.
And now a word from our sponsor. I'm Elizabeth Sherry, your host, and I want to tell you about Jesse Wilkin and his venue, Northern Stacks Events. Northern Stacks Events in Fridley is the perfect spot for your industrial-style wedding or unique corporate event. Located 3 minutes south of Interstate 694 off East River Road in Northern Stacks Industrial Park, this 3,100 square foot event space is nestled along the train tracks in the building shared with Forgotten Star Brewery. This space is fully customizable by you. There's enough space for approximately 150 for a seated dinner. For more information on Northern Stacks Events, please visit northernstacksevents.com. And now back to our show.
Match your team as well. How many of you have done a Zoom call or a virtual presentation with more than one person? What's your experience been in that? Have you been in the same room or has it been separate?
So it's been separate. This is actually in my old career.
Okay.
We did corporate recruiting, and so we had a number of times where we were presenting to a corporate team. So a lot of times it was even VP level.
level controllers, all that kind of stuff. My team was on my end, they were on their end, and honestly, it worked out great. I mean, but you're gonna be prepped, like, you know what?
Right.
That's the whole thing, like, you had to be ready.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, prep is the key, and that's one thing we work a lot with a lot of companies on, is they make the assumption, because they did it in the live space, that they can just show up. Oh, I got this handled, I've been doing this, I've been interviewing for these jobs for years, I know what to do. They show up and they just flip their laptop up and then they go. But they're not taking a moment to realize, well, how are we all looking together? What's our headroom? What's our framing? Next week when I'm on screen, I can do a little bit more of that. But it really is simple. Try to match in how you look. Try to match your environment. When I do work with the team at Sage Presence, we're all in suit coats, we're all in button-up shirts. We all have the same headroom and sort of the positioning on our cameras. And so we come across as a cohesive team where one isn't blown out, one isn't sideways, one isn't wearing something else. If we're gonna all stand, we all stand. If we all sit, we all sit. But we try to come across as a cohesive team. So that's tips for the camera. Is there anything here that stands out for you in your world, like, well, that doesn't work, or that doesn't make sense, or anything else that any of you have found that has been helpful in that space? Okay. Again, it's not rocket science, but it is subtle. If you can make a subtle adjustment, you can make the world a difference. Message design. This is sort of that elevator speech process. What I really appreciated about the networking today was that when everyone got up, some of you had your tagline. Some of you kind of had your way of being remembered in the experience. Sage Presence really worked on this process. Story structure model is the foundation of the work that we do at Sage Presence. And it's very simple. I could have built it out, but I'll keep it simple by laying it all out here and I'll walk through. When it comes to any story, you always have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Here we do a negative B, we do an M, we do a plus E. Pretty simple, basic story structure. So the beginning is a not so happy beginning is always a problem. There's some problem somebody's facing. And the outcome that they want is a happy ending. The solution in the middle is the action in the middle that gets someone from their not so happy beginning to their happy ending. And then there's a main character and there's a hero. And so when it comes to this approach to story structure, you want to think about who your main character is. And your main character is not you. Your main character is obviously your client, the person who's wanting to come forward to communicate or to have their wedding. And their problem is they've got a wedding. And now their wedding has to be only limited to 25 people. So that's a real problem that is unfortunate. And my empathy goes out to you in the realm of politics, and I'm not going to get political, but having worked in the film board, understanding the dynamics of these people saying that we need to do this when they don't do what we do, and it's frustrating, it's maddening, but it's reality. And innovative individuals, regardless of the industry, are learning how to adapt to make things work. So the problem now is even more. I want to have a wedding, but I have to limit it to this. And you want to become the hero. You want to help that main character get from their not so happy beginning to their happy ending. And this can become a very simple way for you to communicate what you do, depending on what you do. So I would love to work with someone on this quickly. Is there someone who would love to work with what their expertise is and kind of figure out how to tell their story in a succinct manner, utilizing this knowledge? Yes?
I'm actually starting a new business.
Okay.
Teaching other bridal shops how to sell off the wrap around the country.
Okay.
So I'm just starting this.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So tell me about who your client is. Who's that main character that would come to you?
A bridal shop owner.
Bridal shop. And why would they come to you?
To learn how to sell inventory that's not selling on their floor.
Okay, very good. So their problem is that they have inventory that isn't selling. So when a bridal shop has inventory that isn't selling, and they want to sell that and make profit off of it, or they want to at least get it off their floor, I assume, your company comes in to help them do that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's really the simple process in this. is that when bridal companies are wanting to get rid of inventory, I come in and help, or I or your company comes in and we work with them to help find creative ways to, and again, work through whatever your description is, so that they sell that product and they can continue to move. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So how would you say it? How would you say it utilizing this?
That's kind of what I've been struggling with, is coming up with something that's gonna grab it.
Sure.
So that's the big piece, is getting their attention.
Right.
And then, helping them to know that they can solve that problem. Their main thing right now is they can't sell the dresses before, because they're used to selling new only.
Okay.
Newer. So there's stuff that's been sitting there, is just put in the corner. So it's really trying to help them pull that out and make money from it.
Right, right.
So maybe telling them that they can make money. I mean, you know, showing them something positive, a happy ending.
Sure. And how do you do it? What's your process in helping them sell?
It's basically teaching them how to teach their consultants to overcome the fact that they don't need a new dress, they can get one that's a sample dress.
Oh, got it. Okay. Okay. So you teach their teams how to sell the product. And then let me ask a question just for clarity. How do you get paid as a consultant to come in and help them sell their?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Either that or they buy my product as a webinar type training.
Oh, sure,
program, or I come to them. So there's two different ways.
Got it. Excellent. And as this new business is budding, what are the challenges that you faced in the COVID world? Is it just getting your message out there, or how is the bridal dress industry impacted by COVID? Is it now appointment only, traditionally?
Correct, yes. Yes. And it's actually a positive thing for what I'm doing,
Yeah.
because they need to get rid of that inventory. They can't afford to sit on it.
Sure.
And there are brides out there that want inventory that they don't have to pay as much for because of what's going on. And I do it virtually, so there's a lot of positives there.
Excellent, excellent. So in this particular instance, as you begin to create that elevator pitch or that experience, and this is true for any of you as you think about how to communicate your message to those potential clients, is that you want to think about what their problem is and what your solution is and how you get them to their happy ending. If you can understand how you get them to their happy, they're selling more dresses, they're selling that content. So you're going to come up with your particular system. Now, if you're a venue, it's the same way. You have the ability to talk about, the problem is that you got to have a wedding of 25 people. Like, that's probably going to be the problem for a lot of folks. I want to have a wedding, but I have it as 25. So what's your solution to help people feel confident about those things and get them to that happy ending outcome? So as I'm happy to chat more with you about that and kind of continue to dig in, but when you think about the solution in the middle, usually what happens is we just go to the solution. People call us, hi, I'd like to know more about your services. Okay, well, I offer X, Y, and Z. But we're trained since the beginning of storytelling, we're trained to think in stories, we're trained to think about beginning, middle, and end. So if you can begin to tell your story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, it allows you and that person to really create the image in their head. You're not just a solution person. You're actually helping them see what it is that they need to do. So I kind of blew through that. Usually we do a 4-hour workshop and I'll tell you a story. I'm giving it to you in 10 minutes. I do want to be mindful of time. So what time are we at and what time would you like? About 5 more minutes? Okay, very good. Synergy and connection. This one, I'm going to blend into this dynamic of how do you create synergy with people. And for some of us, it's innate, right? We all have coworkers, we all have people that we work with in life where we're like, oh man, I can sit down and have a conversation with them immediately. And then there are others who are maybe a little more introverted. They're a little bit more uncertain about communicating themselves. And so it's sort of like sometimes pulling teeth to get those people to communicate at the level that you communicate. And yet you're supposed to train them in and train them up and help them move forward. But they got to step up, and it really has a lot to do with confidence. I'm going to keep this up because it also touches upon the 2 points that are the most important about making a connection. We talked about the Zoom space and the challenge of making a connection. This is true across the board, and this is one of the unique, subtle differences in the training that we do with Sage Presence now with folks, because they don't think about it. And that is, first and foremost, if you look at this picture, although it's not great because of the light, can anybody see what everyone is doing on this? There are two things that are happening, but can anyone see? You're smiling. Smiling. Anything else? They're centered, yes, and as Chris did like this, they're making eye contact. So what's great about the Zoom space is that is the one place that you can make eye contact consistently. But the problem is, you have to stare at the screen. You have to stare at the camera. And too often, innately what we do is we start looking at the people, right? Oh, I'm going to look at the people on my screen. And I'm going to talk to the people on my screen. My favorite one is I had a meeting just yesterday. And again, these are folks who are considering to bring us on to work with them. And we have a book called Winning Virtual ABC Interviews, where we break down all of our methods. They've read the book. They've actually gone through a workshop with us, and they're still looking over here, because the camera's right here. And they're talking to us here, because they see us here, but their camera's here. And it's very uncomfortable. So the two things to think about when you want to connect is eye contact. Number one is eye contact. Now, in a live environment like this, you're used to giving eye contact through conversation. Many of you here today, I've been able to give eye contact to. I'll talk to you a little bit, and then I'll talk to you a little bit. I'll move over and talk to you, and I'll talk to you, and I'll talk to you. And it's about giving sort of a thought to each person, a couple of sentences to each person, feeling like you're making that connection. In the Zoom space, it's about staring at the camera 90% of the time, and 10% of the time glancing down or making acknowledgement to the screen so you can see. Now, a couple of the things people comment on. Well, that's exhausting. How do I know what they're doing? How do I know what my team is doing? And the synergy of that is trust. If you're doing a presentation with a team, like you shared earlier, practice, practice, practice. Take the time to actually do the work in advance so that you feel confident as a team presenting. There's an exercise that I'll do next week on the virtual version of this, which is about tag teaming. The ability to tag team in a Zoom environment is about being able to trust and listen to your other person, and when they're done, this is a bit schizophrenic, but I'll do a tag team with myself, in that I can have a conversation and I can talk about anything, and when I'm done with that point, I can be complete. Then you allow that Zoom beat, and that person comes back in and they talk. And then you do it all the time in conversation. But in the Zoom space, you also create an ability to allow yourself the ability to step on each other. That's the other favorite thing, right? Oh, excuse me, go ahead. No, I'm sorry, after you. And then you waste all of these seconds because you're stepping on top of each other. In a synergy exercise that we do for tag teaming, we trust that if I get interrupted by Dean or I interrupt Dean, who I present with a lot in the Zoom space, he knows to stop and let me finish. And I know to stop if he interrupts me. So the interrupter actually gets the right of way so that we're not stepping over each other and we're not apologizing. So eye contact, stare down that camera as best as you can. Make that human connection. We're used to seeing eye contact, and that's such a valuable thing. The other thing was it's a smile, and there's a difference between smiling and talking to someone through the lens as I'm looking at the camera here, and making that connection through a smile, but it's a difference between an eighth grader taking a smile in a school picture and forcing that smile versus an authentic smile. And the most important thing for all of you in your work, and this is true for anyone who's wanted to make a human connection, is authenticity. And the best way to get authenticity is to appreciate the people that you're talking to, even if they're potentially a bridesmaid. Appreciate the conversation. When you bring appreciation to the Zoom space, you can appreciate that it's uncomfortable, you can appreciate that and there's a difference between appreciation. I can talk without appreciation, and I can talk about the importance of presenting effectively, and I can talk to you about the importance of Zoom and why in the Zoom space you want to look at the camera and you want to make sure you're in your framing correct. But if I bring appreciation to it, boy, you know what? That Zoom space is maddening, isn't it? You get into the space and you've got to do everything that you were used to doing. But you know what I appreciate about it is it actually an opportunity to still make a human connection. You can see the difference there, right? There are people who present in the Zoom space, and they present pretty stoic. But when they bring appreciation to it, you can talk about anything with appreciation, and suddenly it reignites and brings a whole new energy to the space. So these are just some simple things, but those two key connectors are eye contact and appreciation. Now, at any point if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. That's my cell phone, my email, Sage Presence if you want to know more about Sage Presence. We have done a number of webinars as well, so if you want to go in and learn about Confident Presence for the virtual space, there's a webinar available to watch that. Again, nothing I said here today is new, but what I can share with you, especially since COVID, since March, all the way up through now, and what's going to continue to happen all the way through, is that we aren't going anywhere, and the virtual space isn't going anywhere. So if you can come to that virtual space with a level of confidence, appreciation, make that eye contact, it can help increase business. And I can share that because we were a firm who thought everything was going to go under, and we adapted, and we brought appreciation and excitement and enthusiasm to a space that none of us want to be in, but we have to. This is the world we're in. And we still make those human connections, we still make connections, and best of all, as many of you are, you may be making networking connections now with people, and I have a whole conversation I can tell you about virtual conferences as well, what it's like to network in virtual conferences and virtual booths, and what that whole experience is like, having done that at a number of national conferences now. It's not what I want. I want to move around to booths. I want to talk to people. I just would love to shake someone's hand here. This is okay. I can do the elbow bump. But, so, any questions, please let me know. I hope you found this insightful and helpful. Again, nothing's rocket scientist, but if you can make a few subtle changes, it can make a world of difference. It's helped us help teams win over $3 billion in sales during COVID alone. So, thank you.